Welcome to the Life with Joey Calvo podcast. I am Joey Calvo. Our podcast is part of the World Podcast Network, now with over 1,100 podcasts. Visit the World Podcast Network at https://worldpodcastnet.network to listen to podcasts in over 12 genres. Come vote our podcast episodes up and help us rise to the leaderboard. If you have a podcast of your own, you can join for free. Today I have before I even introduced you, Wow. Before we even start,
suspense.
yeah, we have 3 viewers.
Oh my God.
Already. And a comment. So let us get to the guests first, and then we'll get to the comments. And thank you for the comments in advance. It just dropped one, but so our guest today is.
They looked at me and they said, "Oh, forget about it."
Our guest today is Eric Sonnenschein. He has a new book out called Rocked and Rolled. He's published 5 novels. Oh, wait a minute. I got to get back to this. It's in the description, by the way, of this. He's published 5 novels, 4 volumes of essays, 1 book of verse, 230 essays that have reached millions, and composed and recorded many songs. So, Eric, first of all, welcome to the podcast. That third person did come back.
Thank you, Joey. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. And so, who is Eric Sonnenschein?
Oh, who is Eric Jay Sonnenschein? Okay. Well, I am. You very eloquently just laid out my main credentials, but I'll go over them again. I'm Eric Jay Sonnenschein. I'm a novelist, a story writer, an essayist, a journalist, an art critic, a poet, a songwriter, and a blogger, and an artist. I've invented my own art form as well. So that's me in a nutshell. I guess 10 words or less.
Okay. And so this new book, it's called Rock and Rolled. Can you elaborate on the book?
Well, I would say that Rocked and Rolled is on one level, on the most basic level, it's a kind of urban adventure story about a young guy who gets a calling to become a rock and roll performer. And he came to New York to be a writer and to be artistic and all the other things, but he decides he's going to focus all of his energies on being a rock and roll singer, songwriter. And basically Rocked and Rolled is a narrative about this young man's pursuit of this particular dream. On another level, it's about, and it also takes place in a very particular, it's almost a time capsule in that it takes place in a very specific time in New York City at the cusp of the late 1970s and early 80s, when New York was going through a large, a big trend, especially that area was going through.
Yeah, Studio transit. 54.
Exactly.
And oh God. Oh.
CBGB.
Yeah, I was trying to remember that club. Yeah,
all of these different things were happening, and also in the Lower East Side and East Village, you were having the old immigrants. You were having the last vestiges of the hippie community. Mm-hmm. You were having a new influx of artists, gallery owners, punk rockers, new wavists, people from Europe, all these other people, and all converging on this one area to basically, be creative and be a part of this scene. And so that's also part of Rocked and Rolled, and it's very, very detailed about that era. I mean, it's very descriptive about it. And then on another level, I would say it's almost a guidebook on how to start to take music from the dream to the studio, to the stage, to the record, to the store. It goes through all of that because the protagonist of the book, Trevor, is somebody who in his early 20s, decides to do what a lot of aspiring musicians start doing when they're 10 or 11. I mean, he basically has skipped over all the preliminary stages of being in a garage band and getting together with the neighborhood guys and going and sneaking beers out, by the railroad tracks and all the other things that are kind of built into the rock and roll mythology. He skipped all that. So he's in his early 20s trying to catch up, if you will, and do it not with people he knows, not with the old neighborhood guys, not with his old friends who he knows, but with all strangers in one of the biggest and probably toughest cities in the world, for doing that. Albeit New York has always been a creative melting pot and a great place to be creative. It's certainly, from the human standpoint, it's not an easy place to cooperate, collaborate, make friends, and so on. So anyway, that's the story. The story is about how Trevor, the protagonist, goes about taking this wild idea, like this guy who's really has very little background in rock and roll music, and decides to take it to the limit, and it's obviously, as you can imagine, it's full of humorous situations. It's full of difficult situations, a lot of performance cliffhangers. At the same time, of course, Trevor has to have a day job. He has to support this dream. And of course, he's a cab driver. So that's also an element of it, the dangers and the vicissitudes, the craziness of being a cab driver and having literally all of New York getting into the back of, in the back seat of your car and telling you to go here and there and dealing with that reality. So that's it. I hope, I think that kind of gives you a flavor for it. Obviously, New York, along with Trevor, I would say New York is the star of the show. I mean, is really the protagonist of the book, because New York is everywhere. New York infuses the whole book. I mean, it's full of neighborhoods that are still here, but have radically changed. It's full of sights and sounds that some of which are still there, some of which have been cleaned up. It was about a time when New York was a little grittier than I think it is now, and probably a lot grittier, and still had a lot of holdover of the kinds of characters, tough guys and oddballs. And it was a time when people came to New York, bikers and all, like the bikers on East 3rd Street, the New York chapter of Hell's Angels, people like that. And you had all kinds of this mix of very, very, colorful people, all kind of doing their own thing and still trying to do their own thing. And at the same time, kind of being pushed along because of gentrification and the fact that everybody had discovered the scene. And when everybody discovers something, that things are always going to change. That's Heisenberg's principle. Nothing that's observed ever is the same as it was. So
when you mentioned that this book is based back in the 70s and 80s, and it just reminded me, I was like, I was just born in the 70s, and in the 80s, I was in my teens. And then you mentioned about how Trevor was a taxi driver. Believe it or not, I was too.
Oh my God, really?
But that was back in the 90s, though. In a little town called Somerset, New Jersey. So I did that for, off and on. I did it for about 8 years.
That's a long time.
9 years. But not in Philadelphia. Thank God not in Philadelphia, because in Philadelphia, it's all hell.
Key to what you just said, though, was off and on. I think that cab driving is one, even in rock and roll, cab driving at first is the lesser of evils. I mean, it's either that or go hungry and he can't find another job. But then afterwards, cab driving becomes something he goes back to. Trevor goes back to, because it becomes something he knows he can do and that he can readily make money. And I'm sure you found that to be true in your own life.
I actually did, because what happened was when I first started, it was back about 93. I lose track. He was either 93 or 94. And I was doing good. I mean, I was making like 3 digits a week, tax free.
That's good.
You know, it was livable. And I managed. The off and on started in '99 because the person I was with at the time, my pager, yes, that's right, folks. I said pager. Now we're talking old school. Okay. I had a pager, and this pager went off like clockwork, every Saturday at 6 a.m. Literally. Now, this person also, when they paged me, knew that I don't work till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I work till 3 o'clock the next morning.
Mm-hmm.
But they asked me every week, though, you want to come in and help out? I'm like, I come in and dispatch at 3 o'clock. Me working from 6 a.m. to 3 a.m. No, can't do that. And that person got tired of the pager going off every week. That she and it was very hard to do. She made me leave that job. And then I got back into it with another company, and after a bit, there became a little issue that I couldn't work there anymore. Not that I physically did. It was just, I'll just say, paperwork. In reference.
Yeah, I hope that you didn't have to go through this, but I as a cab driver and my character Trevor sort of inherited this from me. I had quite a few dangerous experiences driving a cab. Some of them were mechanical. Some of them were due like to 360-degree skids on wet pavement. Others were due to the malevolence of my fellow drivers on the road, truck drivers, drunken teenagers from Canarsie, people like that, basically attacking the cab, kicking in windows, chasing me, that kind of thing. So I also had that sort of, there was the New York element there too. And I was actually kind of lucky because I knew a cab driver. He was he had developed a computer program for betting on the horses, and he once went out like at 10 o'clock in the evening. He had already been out there for like 7 or 8 hours and had made over $100, $150, $200. He got held up. Went out there again and remade that whole money. He was a very good cab driver, but a lot of people were held up like that. I actually was once, I was almost held up a few times, but I would behave so erratically when I thought that my passengers were a little off, that they would just get out. Like I would be, swerving and skidding and putting on the brakes constantly.
Okay.
And of course, I don't know about you, but when I started driving a cab, I had barely driven my whole life. I got a license in a suburb of Washington, D.C. I got the license, and then I had driven maybe a handful of times. Maybe somebody like a girlfriend let me drive her car a little bit. And that was basically it. Here I find myself, in the deep end of the pool, swimming, driving in New York City.
Yeah.
Couldn't really deal. I mean, I was over my head with New York traffic to begin with. Then I didn't.
I agreed on that.
I didn't know my way on, at least on the street level. I didn't know my way around the 5 boroughs of New York. And at night, especially, you couldn't be looking at a map while you were keeping your eyes on the road.
Right. Yeah.
I basically had to. I had to rely sometimes on the tolerance of my passengers. You know, if they wanted me to, let's say, get to LaGuardia Airport, and I was taking Northern Boulevard rather than taking the Queens, the Brooklyn Queens Expressway.
The
I
BQE,
had,
yeah.
you know, the BQE. I had to do, and then eventually, though, you know, I kind of got into it. You know, I was fortunate. I mean, I remember driving around in a cab that didn't have a horn. I mean,
Oh
that's
my
you know,
God.
that's like
Oh.
going into a gunfight, and you know, with a nail clipper. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, you can't really function too well in New York without a horn. But you know, that kind of stuff, and you know, that's kind of the kind of stuff that I had to deal with a lot.
Well, I'm going to say this only because we both wish we had it back then. I was held up once. Oh, not held up by gun. I mean, they just literally just, you know, robbed me and went, but no gun. But we both would have needed this, and this is, and I'm introducing early. This is the one that sent the questions. This is the number one fan, the number one supporter I told you about.
Yes.
Okay. This is who we both would have needed back then. This is American Fox.
Oh my God.
Yes. This is the superheroine I mentioned many times. This is the one we would need back then in our cabs to make sure everything went smoothly. You know? So
I know, and I was under such a bad sign in those days. I don't even know if American Fox could have saved me, but you know, but maybe. You know, who knows?
Yeah. She yeah. Well, she could. I would have believed in it. So, all right. So you have an excerpt to read.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. So go ahead.
Let me read to you from Rocked and Rolled again. I just want to give you a taste. I don't want to, you know, make this read along, you know, like a you know, bedtime reading type of thing, or like, you know, when we were kids, the teacher in elementary school in first grade would say, okay, now it's time for, you know, reading time. Everybody get on your towels, and I'm going to read.
Yes,
you know,
your mats.
Not going to be like that. I'm just going to read you a short descriptive passage.
Sure,
I don't want to give too much away. Okay. So this is where Trevor is introduced for the first time to the punk rock scene. Okay.
Right. Okay.
Still, Jack must have intuited my talent and how much I wanted to break into music, because a few weeks later, he invited me to CBGB, where his pal Killer Croc's new band, the Corpse Grinders, was gigging. It was Sunday, the graveyard of the rock week. On Sunday nights, friends were the only crowd, tough and enthusiastic, but non-paying. Was Jack trying to turn me off of music by showing me at its worst? Possibly. But he was also letting me witness the second step in his music business comeback. Jack was managing the Corpse Grinders. Even in its heyday, after it became a legendary hotbed of new music, CBGB was a big hole-in-the-wall dive bar, while working men's taverns like Blarney Stone's and Clancy's bars that dotted Manhattan attempted respectability by looking tidy and clean. CBGB eschewed these amenities. As soon as you entered, your nose was buffeted by a reek of sour beer and stale smoke. The room was a tube that sucked a visitor's attention toward the large boxy stage in the back. The high admission and overpriced drinks made people hostile, and the violent, discordant music and harsh essence of the place gave license to the crowd's aggression. Yet, bands played and people paid, because CBGB was where new music was heard on the best sound system in New York.
Okay. So, yeah. And even back then, in reference to that, as you were reading it, and you mentioned about the stale beer and the smoke, you probably got that whiff of weed while you were at it, you know, in the, because I mean, back then, I was lucky back then where I was growing up. You know, you didn't hear much about marijuana like that. Unless you went to the bars in New Brunswick. But like I said, and I lived. And what's interesting is when I was growing up, Rutgers University was down the street, literally. So, you go by there and you see all the college students out at night partying on the Fridays and Saturdays. So before we get to the questions by American Fox, I want to show you the comment that was put on when we first started. And just to let you know, we got up to about 10 viewers watching live right now.
Well, that's
we're
great.
We're down to 9, but it's
10 is a quorum.
Yeah, it's up. It's back up to 10. So it's just as good. And for the viewers that are watching live, thank you. By the way, this is now the second most viewed live stream since Sepsis. That's the rock band. That's the band that's out of New England, and that was almost 2 years ago that happened. So the comment that was given for you, Eric, is, "Hi there, this is Susan from Georgia.
All right.
Really enjoying reading this book on Kindle. Right now, you bought this whole wheat pizza."
Let me see.
We paid for.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, the whole wheat pizzas. Sometimes it's the little kindnesses, the little gestures we make to people that actually can turn our lives around, and that's what Susan's referring to.
Yeah.
Trevor turns on his colleague Jack to some whole wheat pizza, which Jack absolutely loves. It's like a revelation in his life, and Jack is a musical maven, a musical impresario, manager, and so that's how. In fact, I just mentioned Jack in that little snippet that I read, that excerpt.
Yeah.
Thanks,
All
Susan.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you for listening in.
Yeah, thank you, Susan, for that comment as well. All right, so now we're going to get to the questions. So, of course, I brought out earlier, and I'm going to bring back out our number one supporter with no secret identity, American Fox. And the first question she had is, what was it like growing up in New York City?
Well, I have to say that, first of all, this is absolutely true. I was born in New York City and spent the first 6 years of my life here. I was born actually in a hospital that is now, sadly, being closed, Beth Israel Hospital down on 2nd Avenue and between 15th and I think 17th Street. Mm-hmm. And but my parents moved down to Washington. So basically, I spent from 6 to the age of 17, actually in Washington, D.C. And so, as people in New York used to say when I came back to New York, they say, "Oh, yeah, you're very political because you're from Washington, D.C." And it's true that Washington, D.C., while it has a lot of people coming through, it's a very transient place. You have a lot, but you have a lot of military people. You have a lot of government people, and they're more, I don't know, they're more of one piece. Once I came to New York when I was a young man, to the age of 22, New York was a complete eye-opening. It was just like a completely different experience. People in New York were just so various. You had people of all ages, all orientations, all ethnicities, all wearing different kinds of clothes. New York, in a way, gave me license, and I think gives anybody who comes here license to be different, because everybody is different. So I would say that, I was as a child growing up, I was kind of a New Yorker in exile. My parents were New Yorkers. I was a New Yorker. I followed New York teams, but I really grew up outside of Washington. And when I came to New York, I sort of immersed myself in New York and became a New Yorker. And to be honest with you, in the years that I've been in New York, I've spent very, very little time outside of New York. But I've taken a few weeks, a few weekends. There was a brief time when I was in New Mexico, but for the most part, I've been in New York. And I would say that New York, for me, has been one of the, I would say it's been one of the most formative experiences in my life because I had to, everything that I've done, almost everything that I've done creatively has been a part of New York, has been in response to New York. Rocked and Rolled, this novel, is, as I pointed out, it's about rock and roll, but it couldn't have taken place anywhere else but New York. I mean, rock and roll has taken place in so many different scenes. You know, it's taken place in Seattle and Boston and Athens, Georgia, and all over the place. But this novel, Rocked and Rolled, is about New York, is about music in a particular time and place. And I would say that my rapport with New York, my rapport with the people that I met here, the sights, the sounds, the food, the smell, the feeling of the humid air, the damp, the humidity and the heat of the summer, the cold. It's all, you know, the water freezing in the toilet bowl. All of these things, both beautiful and ugly, the violence, the ambulance sirens, the blood being hosed off of the street in the morning by the supers of the East Village. All of this is part of my experience of being in New York. And it's especially in this novel, Rocked and Rolled. So that's what I would say. I would say that my growing up in New York, if you will, really started when I was 22. Okay. And I would say that it's never stopped. Although I think that New York has kind of matured on me. It's become a little middle-aged on us all. I mean, it's a much more, I mean, it's still New York. It'll still have its elements of violence and strangeness and surprise. But it's not quite what it was when I would say New York used to be what I would call the wild, wild East. It was just, you left, when I would go down into, you know, open the doors of my tenement building in the East Village, I'd go out there. I'd feel like I was entering the Coliseum. I mean, you know, to this great big gladiatorial. And, you know, in a way, when I first came here, people said, you know, you got, when you're on the street, you got to hustle, you got to move quickly, you got to be aware of everybody else, of what's going on around you. You don't look up, you don't look around, you're not a tourist, because that's the way you become a mark. And so in a way, being in New York only, even for a few months, it was like boot camp. It was like basic training. I became kind of like, I learned how to be like New York. I learned how to get into the rhythms of New York, and that you know, to be a little paranoid, to be on my guard, to be always hyper aware, and that was you know, it was almost like that was that built, you know, a kind of a built-in app that I had to, you know, to download in myself to be able to deal with it and to survive in it and to thrive in it. Because, you know, you first you have to survive, but once you can survive, then you can start thinking about actually succeeding and making progress.
Okay, and in reference to New York, I do go back to the city once in a while because I go to the Port Authority bus terminal and hop on a bus to go to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, because I'm a casino freak.
Oh, really?
So I'm either in Atlantic City once in a while, once a month, or I'll go to Bethlehem. Or like last month, I actually went to Delaware Park. I wanted to go to Live in Maryland because I hadn't been there in a couple of years. And the first time I went to Live in Maryland, when I saw where it was located, I was like, wow, you can go shopping and then you can lose your money even more because it was right next to a mall. It's connected to a mall. I was like, what? But I was amazed. But I still, like I said, I do go to New York City because I live in Philly and 30th Street Station's not far away. So I'll take the SEPTA train to Trenton and New Jersey Transit into Penn Station, New York, and then walk down 8th Avenue. And I always stop at the McDonald's. And this McDonald's, I don't know why I'm giving this McDonald's a plug, but it's the McDonald's on 8th.
And 33rd Street or 34th, something around there?
No, it's earlier. It's right. It's not that far down from Madison Square Garden.
Okay.
So like 8th and 30th, maybe
Okay.
something like that. But this McDonald's amazes me because it's open 24/7.
Uh-huh.
And I've gone in there because what I normally do in reference to when I go to New York, and you know how you talk about how risky it is and stuff. I will get into the city. No lie, folks. I will get into the city between 1:30 and 2:30 in the morning.
Oh, I see.
And so I'll walk down, and like I said, thank God this McDonald's is open. So I'll grab my iced coffee, and I'll put the chocolate syrup in it, and I'll get over to the Port Authority bus terminal. And what the Port Authority bus terminal does, and for those that never been there, between the hours of, I believe it's 12 midnight and 5:30 in the morning, you have to show a bus ticket to walk in the building.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So thank God the New Jersey Transit ticket machines are right outside of that. So I picked up so I was able, I'm able to get my bus ticket for Bethlehem at the time. Now I print it up and just show it to them. But in reference to that, and then once I get in, I do my best not to leave the building. If I do, it's to get, and get some New York air. I'll walk around a block or two. And one thing about Times Square that amazes me is how much it's changed.
Oh, yes.
Times Square used to be more, you had more roads going like this way. Now there's actually a walkway. And I looked and I was like, wait a minute, this is Times Square? I was like, what the hell happened to it? And I was amazed. I was literally amazed. So, but I do go back to New York like once every couple of months in reference to that. All right, so question number 2 from our number 1 fan and number 1 supporter and real life superheroine, American Fox. What interests you in becoming an author?
Well, that's a good question. I would say that for me, becoming an author was kind of it was almost like fate, in the sense that I was being groomed to be an author before I ever really knew, what being an author would be like. From the time when I was 6 and 7 years old, one of my first, one of the memories that I still have of my family growing up was my parents would play this game called Authors with me. And Authors was like a kind of rummy, but instead of having suits like hearts, diamonds, clubs, and spades, you had different authors like Mark Twain, Shakespeare, Alfred Lord Tennyson, Dickens, etc. And you have these authors, and of course the object of the game was to get suits, to have all 4. To collect all 4 of the same authors, and then you won the game. And because of this game, and on each one of the author cards, there were 4 for each author, you'd have their most famous titles. Like you'd have Mark Twain, Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer, The Mysterious Stranger, Connecticut Yankee, that kind of thing. And so I, even at the age of 6 and 7, I started associating authors with their most famous titles. After that, I was a precocious reader as a child. I would read, I remember in 4th grade, I was reading Oliver Twist, David Copperfield. I read The Tempest, which was my first Shakespeare play. And then I think one of the major events was when when I was about, I guess, 10 years old. I was in 5th grade in elementary school. My family got a new set of Britannica encyclopedias, white white leatherette covers with burgundy titles on them,
Yeah.
and I just loved these encyclopedias. I would sit on the floor next to the set of encyclopedias, and I would just go through. And these are onion, like almost onion skin. They're very, very delicate.
Yeah, back then they were really fancy looking. Yeah, I remember those.
I would read these, but what I would read about everything. I'd read about wars, and I would read about countries, but the subject I would read most about were authors.
Mm-hmm.
And I would read, and almost all these authors, whether it was Dostoevsky or Tolstoy, or whatever author it was, they all seemed to have one thing in common: they all suffered.
Okay.
And so I thought, well, at this point, I'm beginning to have, the awakenings of this idea of myself as maybe I'll be a writer. And it bothered me, like all these writers suffered. So I would ask my mother, Mom, do I suffer? Do I suffer? She said, you don't suffer as much as I'm doing right now. And so, I didn't even realize at the time that I probably was suffering, and how much suffering I would actually be doing, and how universal suffering really is. But that was a big moment, when I started more and more identifying with authors and being more and more interested in the lives of authors. I think, though, of course, then as I got a little older in middle school, my essays, I would, get very good grades in English. I would, win awards as in essays. I did plays that would be produced in school. But I think the pivoting, the turning point, the biggest moment, the epiphany for me to be a writer was I had a teacher who I really admired. He was like a mentor for me. And he once said to me toward the end of the school term, Eric, you should be a writer. Your writing is better than this writer over here, this really famous writer at the time. I said, oh my God. My writing, I'm that good. I could be. And at that moment, Joey, I said, I can be a writer. This can be my superpower. This can be the thing that I can do for the rest of my life. And suddenly, all of those problems kids have, Eric Erickson talks about, teenage years as being a time of, identity crisis. I had no identity crisis because I knew I was going to be a writer. I knew this was what I was going to do. My path opened up for me, and every decision I made from that point onward was toward becoming a writer. Everything I did, I didn't have any doubts about it. I was going to be a writer. So that's really, I think, the pivotal moment. How old was I? 14, 15 years old. So it's, that's when that's when boys used to enter apprenticeships when they were, in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, and even in early colonial America. So that's not that seems to be pretty natural in a way. And then, of course, I went to college. I studied English, philosophy, French. I studied all of these subjects which were designed to help me develop myself as a writer. Then when I graduated from college, I went into the Peace Corps again to help form me as a writer. I had to learn how, I'd be in a different culture. I'd have to be on my own. It would be a test of my character. How would I deal with adversity? And then, of course, it would develop material. By the way, my Peace Corps experience is the basis for my novel Mad Nomad, which is also you can see sample on Amazon. It's there. So then I came back from the Peace Corps, came to New York to be a writer, and that was it pretty much until I decided I really wanted to be a songwriter. I wanted more of the immediacy of the performing experience. Writing is, as you know, probably is a very solitary experience and doesn't really give you too many opportunities to encounter an audience, to have that feedback, So then I got into being a musician, and that was what turned me. That was the basis of Rocked and Rolled.
Okay. All right.
I should also say, by the way, that the Peace Corps had another really big impact on me, and I should mention this. I don't want to, is that I started writing songs in the Peace Corps. Maybe it was because I found myself on a lot of buses, buses with very bad shock absorbers, bouncing along in the desert, and all I could look at was the sand and the esparso grass. And so melodies would come into my head, and I would start like singing these, coming up with lyrics. So the Peace Corps was also very formative. It was funny. The Peace Corps actually had something to do with my writing of Rocked and Roll, because I probably wouldn't have never become a musician if it hadn't been for the Peace Corps.
Right. Last question from American Fox is, what is your take of the superhero genre? Now, but I'm going to make this a two-part question.
Okay, good.
So, first, what is your take of the superhero genre? And the second part to that question is, have you thought of doing a superhero novel?
Interesting. Okay, let me take number one.
Go ahead.
I must have been one of the only kids in summer camp, and this may have been the reason my bed was always short sheeted and I found my underwear on the rafters so often. I was one of the only kids who didn't read comic books.
Wow.
I actually became aware of comic books and superheroes by going to summer camp, because almost all of my bunkmates had Superman, Batman. At that time, I don't think Marvel was quite at that big. I mean, in those days, it was the DC comics that really
were DC or Marvel back then. Yeah.
So I learned about Batman and Superman and and Superboy and all the other related mythologies in summer camp. And I have to say, and of course, who didn't watch Superman? The TV show. I mean, everybody had some exposure, even if it was just parodic, like the Batman show with Adam West. Batman.
Well, I was a Wonder Woman fanatic.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Wonder Woman. But by that time, when Wonder Woman was in her heyday, I didn't even own a TV set. So I have to say that I kind of missed that. But I would say this about the superhero genre, because let's say it is so big. It is so big. It is so ubiquitous. People all over the world love superheroes. And I understand it, because superheroes, people, when we're kids, we look around us, everybody's more powerful than we are. We get older, it doesn't change. We go from teachers and parents to bosses and landlords and banks and police and tax collectors and all the rest of it. So obviously, we see that it's so hard to make anything happen, to help our dreams, to make our dreams come true. It's so hard to achieve anything in this world, because there's always a regulation. There's always somebody telling us we can't do it. There's always somebody criticizing us, whatever. So in that environment, obviously there's a real longing for, a fantasy, a wish fulfillment, oh gee, I wish I had the power to overcome all of these obstacles. We also look and we see that the world has so much disparity, so much inequality. We see the very rich get away, do whatever they want. Meanwhile, we have to look over our shoulder just to make sure we don't, run afoul of the law. I hope that I don't get a ticket. Oh, I hope that I don't get stopped by this traffic cop. Oh, I hope that this doesn't happen or that doesn't happen. Or I hope the IRS doesn't look at a few. I sent in the wrong amount of money. We're always worried about every little bit of minutia. Meanwhile, we see that bigger people who have more power, they're able to get away with whatever they want. In that world, we desperately want to believe that there's some way, there's some body out there, there's some entity that can make all that go away, that can overcome all those obstacles, that can defeat evil, that can raise up the nebbishes, the people, the ordinary people who can't really defend themselves or can't get what they want. I understand that, and I understand that longing. I would have to say, though, that in my life and my work, I've always been more inspired by the ordinary person who stands up to, you know, those implacable forces, that hostile universe, and does what they want to do regardless, you know, regardless of the odds, regardless of the fact that they're relatively powerless. You know, I guess I always admired Abraham Lincoln, for instance, and then, you know, you fast forward to On the Waterfront, or you look at, you know, I even just saw a movie that I kind of liked that had a similar theme, Kinky Boots. You know, I mean, people who just sort of, they're ordinary. They don't have power. They may not even have the right background to tackle the problems that confront them, and yet they do it anyway. In Rock and Roll, that's the kind of person I've written about. That's who Trevor is. He's a guy who, he gets this improbable vision, in a way, that he is going to make it to the top of the music business, that he is going to, you know, take his songs, by the way, which he has to learn how to actually put on note paper. He doesn't know how to read or write music. He's going to take these songs, and he is going to assemble these bands and get on a stage and communicate to an audience, and that this audience is going to approve of him and is going to like and is going to relate to what he does. And that finally, he's going to have, not only is he going to overcome that hurdle, but he's also going to actually make records and be on the radio and have people everywhere listen to this music that first came to him when he was traveling around in the deserts of Morocco. So you see, that's the kind of hero that I'm really more interested in. And for me, it's not even a question of winning or losing, because for me, it's the attempt that helps you win. And I always go, in a way, I have something that my character Trevor has something to do, has something in common with the humble fisherman, the brave fisherman in The Old Man and the Sea by Hemingway. And Hemingway is not a writer that I usually will ever quote, but there is a quote, almost a proverb from that book. You know, it's like the idea is not to, you have a victory, but your victory, even in losing, you you have a kind of there's a dignity, there's a victory even in losing, because you attempted it, and you know that you did it. You know that you were able to, that you were brave, and that you didn't fail because you didn't try, or because you were a coward. And I think that I really believe that. That's the kind of courage, that's the kind of bravery and heroism that I believe in. I do respect the superhero, and and I think that there are people who do that genre very well. I don't know if I would be that would be something that would inspire me as much. I don't know if I could even see the conflict in it. You know, for me, there's so much conflict in just being an ordinary person trying to accomplish extraordinary things. That for me, that's what motivates me.
Okay.
So,
All right, I'm sorry to cut you off a bit, but
No,
I
no.
can give you a suggestion in reference to a superhero. Okay. Being that, Rock and Roll has Trevor, performing at CBGB's, you could take Trevor and he, through music, or even come up with another character who is a guitarist, we'll say, and all his powers come from the guitar.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And fighting crime with the guitar. Like American Fox, she looks like Wonder Woman when you look at her. Okay, she is an Amazon like Wonder Woman. The only difference between her and Wonder Woman is the bustier is different, and she doesn't have a golden lasso. But she's out there. She fights crime. She can deflect bullets with the arm bands, and so on. But like I said, the closest rock and roll hero that I think I'm no, correction, no, he's not. The one I was thinking about was Gambit from the X-Men, but he was more of the cards, more of the yeah. So maybe if you ever decided to do a superhero novel, you know, of a guy who, or a girl or a lady, could be a superheroine too. And believe me, if it was a superheroine, American Fox would probably be interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
I
hope that American. I'm sorry. Go on.
I was saying she gets her power. They get their powers from this guitar that they find in a thrift store or something, or a pawn shop, and it winds up being it's got powers, and they grab the guitar, and the first time they grab the guitar, they turn into a superhero.
Yeah, I understand that. That actually makes a lot of sense. Because actually in the book Rocked and Rolled, that's how Trevor gets his instruments. He goes into a pawn shop, but what he sees there is kind of it's not a magical experience, but it is a kind of a transformative experience and a kind of a humorous experience, if you will. In other words, I think that we can find the magic in ordinary life. Mm-hmm. At one point you mentioned a guitar that's magic. Well, a guitarist who's really great on his instrument does kind of make magic. And there's one point in the novel where Trevor has to actually defend his guitarist's guitar. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like a life and death struggle. So I would say that, it's a matter of degree, and I would suggest, and I would hope that American Fox and other lovers of superhero lore would give Rocked and Rolled a chance, because I think that you would find there's a lot there that, if not exactly superhero-like, is sort of magical, or has a sort of a magical air to it.
Okay.
It's a quest. It's a quest novel, if you will. It's about somebody who decides he's going to go on a quest, and from the very beginning, when he commits himself to it, mm-hmm. he believes he's indestructible almost. He gets into all of these fatal accidents and believes that he's being preserved. He's being saved for this greater purpose. Mm-hmm. And I think that there is something to that. There is something fundamentally, whether it's a superhero or a hero, it's always somebody who's on a quest, who's trying to get something that's extraordinary, who's trying to fulfill, who's fulfilling a destiny, who's trying to get some great reward that most people can't even dream of. Most people wouldn't dare to try to do. And I think that all of these genres are kind of related in that respect. So I hope that American Fox will give Rocked and Rolled a chance, and I think that you will be rewarded by reading it, because it's got all of those elements. It's got all of the elements of that a superhero story would have too. It's about trying to overcoming fear, overcoming a hostile universe, trying to achieve things that are extraordinary against great odds, trying to form, I don't know, you haven't asked me this, but what are some of the challenges in forming a band, and that in itself takes a heroic kind of heroic effort, because when you think about it, how do you form this group that's going to have to play together, that's going to have to develop something that's bigger than the sum of its parts? How are you going to get these people who are all driven by their egos to subordinate their egos for some greater objective? And that's almost heroic in and of itself, because we know that even friendships are hard to create, hard to maintain, hard to preserve. And so how are you going to do that with a band? of strangers? How are you going to keep this group together from gig to gig, from from obstacle to obstacle? And how are you going to develop that bond, that trust, especially when bonds, positive human feeling, takes years and years and so many experiences to cultivate? How are you going to do that more or less overnight? That's a very difficult feat, and that's what rock and roll kind of goes into,
All right, Eric. Before we get to there is one more question.
Okay.
Believe it or not, that popped up as we were going through the American Fox questions. But before we go to that question, if you do want to get to know American Fox, she is on Twitter at American Fox 4 or on Instagram at American Fox 12018. And she loves chatting with people about superheroines, or even what Eric was just mentioning. She go on Twitter, or go on Instagram, or go more on Twitter and go to some of the reposts that she put up.
Okay.
And actually comment. She wants to see the comments. She wants to, because most of the followers that you get now these days on Instagram and Twitter are all bots.
Bots, really? Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, like they turn around, like, they say, oh, they like your post, but when you go to their profile, you have to go to like this website. They don't, they're not like real people, And I mean, my Facebook just got hacked. My personal Facebook just got hacked the other day. So that, when I caught up with Eric on Facebook, and he happily promoted this podcast, I had to do it from a new Facebook page. So,
well, I was really happy to promote, because I think what you're doing is really a great thing. I mean, I really appreciate this opportunity. Yeah. You giving a platform for a writer like myself to come on and to demonstrate what I do. I think that's a great. You're doing a great service, I think.
Well, thank you very much.
I'm sorry that you got hacked, and I hope that I don't get it. I guess it's kind of easy for people on Facebook to get hacked.
Oh yeah,
I wish they would do something about that.
And the crazy thing is, they tried to be my sister-in-law.
Oh, gee.
And on top of it, but this is how, and I'm going to say this only because the Facebook is hooked up to the Instagram, and I still have access to the Instagram that I can post things. So I went on Instagram, matter of fact, even today, and it actually tells you in the notifications an unrecognizable device was located here. This is how good social media can be to a point, too. This hacker did not realize that I still had access to my Instagram, and probably now knows. But to find out that this hacker wasn't United States, had a United States phone number to reach me on, but when they went on the Instagram, it came up Nigeria.
Ooh.
I was like, how stupid can this get? So I turned around and I went back. I know where you're really from. And he's like, and the person's like, really where? I said, Nigeria. And they were laughing. Because they didn't know that when you go on other things that I've linked to that Facebook account that got hacked, it tells me.
Uh-huh.
So, but well, definitely, yeah. So it's definitely.
Like I'm sorry. Go on.
Go ahead.
All I was going to say is, it's a sad thing, but when you come down to it, humans, that's how we are, I guess. We live by rivers. They're clean, and we pollute them. We get something like social media that allows us all to communicate with people around the world. So what happens? You get fake humans called bots, and
Yep.
you get people hacking. Why if the hackers would spend half as much time and energy and of their expertise actually trying to communicate with people rather than stopping people like you from communicating, I think would be the world would be a lot better place, wouldn't it?
Yeah. The only bad thing to the Facebook, though, is the Life with Joey Calvo Facebook page is connected to that one.
Oh.
And so the only way I did, quote unquote, join my own group. And so the only way I could go on there is post it as a visitor, not the original person. No big deal. I'm not worried about it. But like I said, if you love superheroines and you want to chat with American Fox, please do.
Okay.
We would love to hear from everybody. And when you do go on, and I didn't put it in on that comment that's up on the screen, when you do chat with her, let her know, hey, I was watching the Life with Joey Calvo YouTube channel. I heard about American Fox, and I want to get to know American Fox.
Okay.
Or tell me about American Fox.
Okay.
Conversationalize. So that way, one, she knows you're a real person and not a bot. Because, like I said, people will start following and don't do anything. They'll just, quote unquote, sit there. They follow and they're like, okay. And then when you have to go through everybody, they're like, hey, I don't know this one. And then when you go to that, like I said, when you go to their bio or their profile, you find out, oh, they had this OnlyFans account, or they had this one website where they're nude, they're practically naked and stuff, and you have to block them. You literally have to block them.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally have to go through every one of them to go through that. So definitely with American Fox, socialize. Literally put a post on Twitter and say, hey, I watched the Life with Joey Calvo podcast and heard your questions and want to get to know you. Like I said, as soon as
Joey,
finds out.
Well, Joey, that leads me to a question I have for you, I guess, and maybe you could tell people who are tuning in now how they, how can your show be accessed? How can they find, let's say they want to see this again, or they want to tell somebody else who didn't actually see this live. Is there a way that they can see this show?
Sure. First of all, if we were doing the audio podcast formerly on anchor.fm /Life with Joey Calvo, that has all the previous audio podcasts, not including the ones that have been done since July. All the audio podcasts are on anchor.fm /Life with Joey Calvo. All the live YouTube podcasts, like this live stream, is on the Life with Joey Calvo YouTube channel.
Okay.
That's
good. So
now, you had mentioned about guitarists.
Okay. Yes.
On the Life with Joey Calvo YouTube channel, and on and there is a little ticker, folks, on the bottom as well, that will tell you about some guests that have been on the show. One of them is a smooth jazz guitarist. Matter of fact, I'm going to step off the screen a minute, so bear with me.
I'm still here, guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, the live stream's still on. But normally we do the audio only allows to do an hour. So on the YouTube, yes, we're doing more than that. Now, I had mentioned just a minute ago about a smooth jazz guitarist. The first time I had him on the podcast, I literally said, I would love a copy of your CD. Nope. Nope. You can barely see it. But
I see it. Yeah. Oh, I see it. Yeah.
This is Eric Essex.
Okay.
Right after we did that podcast, he literally sent this to me autographed.
Wow, that's cool.
So I've never opened it.
Oh, no.
I never will.
Oh, okay. So it's a collector's item.
It's a collector's item to me.
Okay.
We became great friends to the point where I actually sent him holiday cards.
Okay.
So check out, matter of fact, I'm going to put his website on there. Susan, I apologize. I'm not forgetting your question. We're going to get to it. But I wanted to bring this up, being that we're in the part of rock and roll and all this stuff. So,
well, yeah, please. I'd like to hear. I'd like to hear Susan's question.
Yeah, we're gonna get to it in a moment. But just to let you guys know, that's his website, ericessex.net.
Okay, I see it. That's cool.
And if you are an artist and you're interested in wanting to maybe collaborate, he actually remade, before I get to Susan's question very quickly, he actually just within the past year redid Ain't No Sunshine with the one and only Ruben Studdard from American Idol.
Oh, okay. I remember that name.
And the video is and Eric Essex does have a YouTube channel, just to let you know.
Okay.
So that video is on YouTube. All right. Susan, again, thank you for your patience. I apologize that I did not get to this question fast enough. Give me one moment. Let me get American Fox off. Okay. And now Susan's question, Susan from Georgia, her question is this. Rock music in the late 70s and through the mid 80s was my generation. Was mine too. Do you feel it was one of the absolute best times for the best music? And she spelled, of course, she did 20th wrong, but of the 20th century.
I would say that, I would say that rock and roll of the late 70s and early 80s was probably the last, probably the last great push for rock and roll, for live rock and roll. I would definitely say that was if not a golden age, because, the golden age probably had to be in the late 60s, the 60s and early 70s. I would say it was the last push, the last great chorus of rock and roll. I would definitely say so. I would say that, and you have to realize also that it was a very brave moment for rock and roll. It was almost like the last. It was a last gasp, because look what was going on. You had disco from the mid 70s on to the early 80s. Disco and dance music were supreme. I mean, every station, every rock and roll bands, even like the Rolling Stones, like the Who, they were all doing rock. They were all doing disco. They all did their own disco song. And disco albums. And so punk rock, new wave music was kind of had to bravely hold the flag for rock and roll during that time. And eventually, of course, rock and roll and disco and dance music started to merge. with Culture Club and with that kind of music, Human League, the kind of the British kind of synthesized that whole thing, so that you were hearing kind of a new wave and punk rock sensibility, but it was still with a very strong bass drum and strong bass lines, and big sound and people dancing to it. But I would say definitely, that rock and roll from that period was the last great era of rock and roll. And you look at it, there was grunge rock in the 90s, the Seattle scene. There have been other rock bands since then. But nothing like that. Nothing like what was going on in the late 70s and early 80s, where you actually had clubs, you had people from all over the country touring, coming to New York, releasing records, going in different directions. You had a lot of unique sounds. People were making, I know even the band that I was in, we were making music that other bands weren't making. They were making music that we weren't making. We would often be on double, triple bills, and we'd hear 3 different bands, and they were all living within the same area code. They were still in the same zip code, and yet they were doing things that were so radically different from one another. And I think that what Susan's pointing out is very true. There was a real ferment of energy. It was almost like, we want our chance to be the 60s. We want our chance to be like, the Doors and the Jefferson Airplane and all these other groups that came out during Monterey and Woodstock.
Yeah.
We want that for ourselves.
Yeah.
And of course, then what happened after that was you had MTV.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You already had now that put a distance on music. Now music was more for video. It was more stylized. It was being put together by directors and art directors and editors, and lots of close-ups and attitude shots. And then from there, of course, we get to the computer age, and where music is just swapped very easily.
Everything's all digital now.
Everything's digital. Everything. And there's no. It's almost like it's like what you were talking about being hacked. It's like everything just passes impermeably through through the internet. Permeably, I should say, not impermeably. So in fact, when you were asking me, I don't know if you've asked me this, but what would I say to a person trying to make it in music these days? It's so weird. I don't even know. Are there places for people to make live music? I know there are comedy clubs. People do actually go out and see comedians do their thing. Unknowns, knowns. I don't know. Do people actually go out and see live bands that they've never seen before? I mean, in a way, that was a very generous impulse. In today's day and age, everybody. I think it's the money for going to concerts. I mean, there are people going to live concerts. We know that just from what's going on with Taylor Swift. I mean,
and Beyonce and all of them. Yeah,
there are a few people out there who are commanding huge crowds and huge amounts of money for their live shows. Mm-hmm. But where does a young band? Where does a band of unknowns? Where do they develop their musical style? I remember, in the book Rocked and Rolled, what the sound engineer at CBGB tells Trevor, it'll take you guys 100 gigs, to really get that, finesse, get that polish that you need, to really 100 gigs, 100 live audiences. Can any band find even 50 live audiences today, or 25 live audiences? So what Susan points out is a really important historical. It's not just, it's a cultural and it's a historical point. How would it even be possible today, or even over the past 20 years, to replicate what was done during the late 70s and early 80s?
Well, I definitely can say, mentioning about 100 concerts and New York City and everything. There is one famous New Yorker who just did their 100th show in New York, no less, and did it for took 10 years to get 100 shows. And of course, I'm talking about Billy Joel.
Of course.
And I mean, there's a legend of his own, you know. And I think he was ending his residency at Madison Square Garden when he did that 100 show. And they actually showed it on CBS, so I got to see it. But the first night they originally aired it, I was working, and crazy enough, yes, I work at Amazon, folks. Okay, I load and unload trucks, so I don't see all of Eric's books coming through, you know.
Oh no.
No. So I don't see.
Exposed.
If they're ordered, they're packaged up, so I don't see them. So you know, but the night that they showed Billy Joel live doing the 100 concert, they actually screwed it up because they cut 2 minutes of the live concert.
Oh.
At just before 11 o'clock. So they turned, I mean, there was a lot of scrutiny over a couple of days. CBS turned around and said, listen, we're going to re-air the concert in its entirety then. And I was lucky enough to watch it that night. And I loved it. And that last 2 minutes that they cut out was from a song. So, definitely, like I said, like you said, you know, it's harder. I did have a band on this podcast. It's on the Life with Joey Calvo YouTube channel. If you click on the live on the Life with Joey Calvo YouTube channel, you will see all the podcasts that were done. And one other podcast that I've done, speaking of New York, speaking of celebrities in a way, for all you Blue Bloods fans, in that live feed, in that live group of videos, there is a video with Gregory Jabara, who played Deputy Commissioner Garrett Moore on Blue Bloods. And the day that we did this, and this was 4 years ago now, when we did this, this was the day that William Shatner went to space.
Oh, okay. I remember that.
So, if you watch the video, he actually asked me, am I watching Shatner going into the rocket? And I said, no. And I went over to the channel and put it on. And we were literally talking about, for the last part of the podcast, William Shatner going to space. And him coming down and so on. So we were talking about that. Your daughter Amanda reached out in the comments when I showed the picture, when I showed the CD of Eric Essex. She said she couldn't see Eric's face. And for those who want to get to know Eric Essex, like I said, go to ericessex.net, or he has a YouTube channel. So you can see the videos of Late Night Drive that introduced me to Eric Essex. That remake of Ain't No Sunshine is on there as well. And his latest single is called Time to Chill. Oh my God. It is the best 3 minutes out there if you listen to it. Now, since we just mentioned your daughter, I hear she's a producer.
That's only one thing she is. She's a director, producer, screenwriter, TV writer,
promoter.
Yeah. Right now she's directing a an experimental play called Electric Eye out for a theater in LA called the Theater of Note. They're pretty well established out there. And so, and it's really quite an extravagant spectacle. It's going to be opening late September, and it involves obviously live acting, also projection. It's quite an elaborate and ambitious show. And Electric Eye, if you're out there in Hollywood, if you're out there in LA, late September, definitely something to look into.
Oh, that
I know I'm going to be looking into it.
Yeah. When you mentioned projection, I one thing came to mind, and I could picture that. I could really picture this. And I've been to Las Vegas. So in Las Vegas, and actually, Madison Square Garden actually owns what I'm about to say. There is a sphere that was just built in Las Vegas.
Uh-huh.
And inside is 1 million screens.
1 million screens. Wow.
Yes. So you can project everything all over. And I believe Fish was the first concert that performed. No. Was it Fish or U2? One of the two did a concert at the Sphere in Las Vegas. And actually outside of the Sphere is also screens.
Oh my God.
So you can actually, they projected different themes. So when you're in Las Vegas, definitely check out the Sphere in Las Vegas. It is owned by Madison Square Garden. All right, so we have really made this podcast very interesting, I'm happy to say. So thank you, American Fox. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Amanda, for subscribing as well. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the Life with Joey Cavill YouTube channel, so that way when any new podcasts come up, and the next podcast that I am doing will be Monday, August 26th at 4 p.m. Eastern. So catch the live stream. And like I said, click on the notifications. You'll get the notification when I'm going live. So subscribe. Check out all the live videos that were done. There are some that I put in because I mentioned earlier I go to casinos. I put in some reels where I've hit on some slot machines. I have them on the Life with Joey Cavill YouTube channel. I have my bad singing on the main page. When you click on the first page of the videos, that's there. Like I said, all the live ones are all the live stream podcasts. So, Eric, how can we reach you?
Oh, thanks. Thanks for mentioning that, Joey. Basically, I'm really easy to reach. You can find my work if you ever. First of all, you can find me on Amazon very easily. Just go Eric Jay Sonnenschein on Amazon, Eric Sonnenschein on Amazon, and you'll come to my author page. You'll see all my books out there. You click on any one of them. You can sample any one of them. You can see a little bit about me, my bio. So that's one way you can reach me on Amazon. You can, if you want to just focus on Rocked and Rolled, just Rocked and Rolled by Eric Jay Sonnenschein will take you right to that page. Also, if you just want to sample some of my writing on other subjects, I've written on a wide range of topics since 2014 on LinkedIn, LinkedIn Pulse. You can go Eric Jay Sonnenschein, Eric Sonnenschein on LinkedIn, and it'll take you to you can read any one of 230 essays that I've written, and that's just perfectly free. Just go in and check it out. I'm on Facebook. I'm on X. I'm on what else is there?
Instagram, TikTok,
yeah. You can, if you want to. My last book, Spontaneous Revolution, I actually do a little I've read, I don't know, 10 or 15 different excerpts on TikTok. Me sitting there in a sweater reading, it's reading time. The BBC used to do that. They'd have they'd have a program where they'd have somebody reading from a book.
Okay.
I do that on TikTok.
All right. I'm gonna pluck your brain.
Okay.
Here it is. Remember back in the 70s, the Magic Garden.
The Magic Garden.
It was a TV show.
No, I don't. I'm sorry. The 70s I was kind of unplugged from TV.
Okay, that's right.
I didn't own a TV through much of the 70s. But what was the Magic? I mean, was that something?
The Magic Garden was two young ladies, Paula and Carol, and Paula actually was a guitarist. She had a guitar, and they would sing songs. It was like Captain Kangaroo.
Oh, okay. It was for children.
But it was for children, and they did, some they used to read stories, and they would sing songs and stuff. And just thinking about how you were stating it was just reminding me of the Magic Garden when they would sit down and start reading the books and stuff.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely did that on TikTok last year.
Yeah,
and got quite a few. I don't know if they call them followers on TikTok. I'm not even sure, but I got quite a few followers on that. Certainly more than 1,000.
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool. I'm not your typical TikTok, performer, but it was kind of fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that you can find me on TikTok, you can find me on Facebook, you can find me on LinkedIn, you can find me on X, you can find me on Amazon. That's a good place to find me. And now you can find me on Life with Joey Calvo.
On the YouTube channel, in the live section.
It's so hard for me to get that lingo. I kept on calling you,
just Joey Calvo,
Calvo Network or YouTube Network. I mean, now I'm getting it. I'm getting it down. It's the YouTube channel. It's the YouTube channel. Yep. Now it's embedded in my brain. It's indelibly etched in there, and it's not going to leave.
I had to do it on Facebook, folks. I had to hammer it through Facebook.
Yeah, well, I just hope that you clear up that issue with people taking over your Facebook. I don't know why do they want to do that. They can start. Why don't they start their own page instead of hacking into yours?
They were doing it to try to get money out of me. They actually turned around and said, "Go to Walmart, get a $50 Apple Card, and I'll let it go." I said, Then when they rehacked it again, after I had cleared it out and I deleted the original email that they used to do it, they turned around, put another email in. When I went to try to unlock Facebook on it, they put a credit card number in that I didn't have. So I turned around and to be very quick about it, they're like, "Oh, put your own credit card." I said, I said, "I never had a credit card on Facebook." I said, "Ain't gonna happen." Excellent. And that's why I just gave up on it. That's when they turn around and says, "Oh, then go to Walmart, get a $50 Apple Card, and I'll release it." I says, "Not gonna happen." So the other place that Eric did not tell you is on the screen at ericjaysonnenschein.com.
Oh, that's right. That's my creative website. Thanks a lot for sharing that.
Yeah.
I will also hold up my book.
Yes, definitely can. Yes, since I had trouble showing Eric's CD, and like I said, go to ericessex.net for Eric's music and tour dates. And check out American Fox on Instagram and Twitter, on X, Twitter.
And Life with Joey Calvo.
Yeah,
YouTube channel.
Life with Joey Calvo is on Instagram and on Twitter, on Facebook, but I won't see it per se, just to let you know. But definitely at least subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow on Instagram, follow on Twitter, on X. Also, we do have a merchandise shop as well. It's shop.spreadshirt.com/life-with-Joey-Calvo. We also have one of those Ko-Fis where, and I've been recently started to ask, because what I'm trying to do is I want to bring the Life with Joey Calvo website back to life. I did have a Life with Joey Calvo website at one time, and I couldn't afford it every month, so I wound up giving up on it. But if you go to ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com, and let me put that down. And in the search, put in Life with Joey Calvo. When you do, there are actual subscriptions. And you can subscribe. Do a monthly subscription. I think the cheapest I did was $5 a month. If you subscribe on Ko-Fi and you do more than $5 a month, you will, and I will, on that ticker below, I will create a new ticker with everybody who sponsors the podcast. If you have a business and you sponsor more than $100 a month, your business name will be on that ticker. This is the first time I'm announcing it today. So go to ko-fi.com, search Life with Joey Calvo, be a sponsor. Once you become a sponsor and you do more than $5 a month, a whole new ticker is going to be made of just sponsors. As much as I love Eric Essex, Carol Alt, American Fox, Sepsis, that's the rock band that I had on a couple of years ago. I would love the audience really being part of this podcast. So all you 8 viewers that are still watching it live, 90 minutes after or 30 minutes after we were supposed to go off, share this with everybody. Eric's going to post this on at least Twitter, because he gets a copy of this YouTube video. So he will be posting it on his social media. I will be posting it on Twitter, on X as well. But definitely go to ko-fi.com. Even go to Patreon. I have a Patreon account too. Patreon. Same thing. If any one of those two, you decide you want to be a sponsor, I will be happy to put your name on a ticker on the bottom of the screen to show my appreciation. If you own a business, doesn't matter where in the United States, okay, you want to promote your business, sponsor the podcast, $100 a month, boom, your business is on the ticker. So Eric, I thank you so much
Thank you, Joey.
for coming on the podcast. It was amazing. We went through so much, and we went through longer than we expected, which is great because usually on an average, these podcasts last at least 30 minutes. So to go an hour and a half, and definitely get Rock and Rolled by Eric Jay Sonnenschein. And like it's, and again, if you love superheroines, check out American Fox on Twitter and Instagram. On Twitter at American Fox 4 or on Instagram at American Fox 012 or no 12018. Thank you everyone for watching the podcast on YouTube. God bless you all.
Thank you, Joey. See you
You're
later.
welcome.